Go.
Let's see if I can.
So,
I'll sit up here.
good morning here from Uber. There's a very big rain outside today, so I'm here to have a conversation with Shu. And
hello, everyone.
The topic was, what was it? How the nervous system works?
Yeah, it's a big question.
It is a big question, which is like, you know, I could ramble and not answer it. So I thought, well, let's endeavor to explore it together and see really where the root of your question is about, because it could go in lots of different directions.
Yeah.
So maybe you want to start.
So, yeah, sure. So I watched the link you sent through on Nassim. It was my first time hearing him talk at all, and it was quite mind-blowing. And then I watched this Dr. Dispenza as well, and he was describing some very scientific or very detailed mechanics of how messages are being sent up and down the nervous system to the pineal gland and all that type of stuff. And then I'm also relating to the physiological experience I've had with doing this type of work. Probably particularly when I had the trauma flooding, because that was probably the most sensitive feelings I had from my nervous system. It was quite open. And also a couple of days ago when I was meditating, I somehow was able to connect with the center thing inside of me, and it was quite distinctively centered to the back. And from there, I don't know what was happening, but I think I was connecting, or when I connected to the central piece, I could expand it from there, and instead of from the dantians.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just curious about that connection and what my experience and what these guys are talking about, and what you understand as the nervous system is.
Yeah, you know, we get into this sort of realm of esoteric because in the world of language, we're dualistic. You know, we're in a very material matrix, and it's quite Newtonian in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And we're focused on the objects, not on the space between them. And when we go within our field, we don't meet the liver as an object. We meet the liver as a vibration, you know, or the heart, or any other organ, or any of the other contents. If you cut you open, there are stuff in there, you know? But we don't experience it in that form. Yeah. So it's like you can't see with your eyes the liver, so, you know, because you can't see with your eyes inside you, but you are compelled more to feel and sense through a different place of perception, or a different point of reference. Yeah, what's in there. And so, you know, there's a danger, there's a value in using words, but there's a danger in believing them and attaching to them, because they can limit our journey of discovery. And the best we can do with words is really to continue the inspiration of the journey of discovery. And at some point, we cease to need to know in the same way. So, you know, like when I'm sensing you and I'm sensing your question, I feel it's a genuine curiosity that you're in that wanting, you know, tips to navigate by. Yeah.
Yeah.
Rather than I need to know so that I'll be okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
So,
I don't think I'm really quite looking for the answer either. It's just maybe more like a
yeah.
verification that it exists, and what I'm sensing is something.
Yes. Well, of course it's something. Well, what is it?
Oh, Lenore.
Yeah. So, and you know, recently posted that thing on with Lilu. Lilu, I like Lilu. She used to interview Nassim many years ago, but
That's how I got onto it.
Oh, is it? Okay. So she's
Yeah.
moved on to Joe from there. So
Right.
I've had various people, you know, send me Joe Dispenza stuff, and I've watched it, and I felt, okay, I resonate. You know, I hear his message, and I like what he says. But I always felt it was kind of, I don't know, there's something about American accents for me. there was something about it. There's something in the flavor of it that, you know, didn't fully resonate, you know. And I think one of the things that, you know, the great non-dual masters used to teach, you know, you'd go sit in a cave and you would journey to the I am, or some flavor of the I am, which is emptiness or the absolute. And the whole task of non-duality was to reach, to transcend the body, yeah, and to arrive in the infinite oneness that's indivisible and undifferentiated, and, you know, that deeper sense of you, which I've been calling emptiness or the absolute, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that. And I got stuck there, and, you know, things were happening in my body that seemed apparently independent of my ability to be in that state.
Oh.
And that, of course, brings quite a bit of curiosity into, you know, like, what is the body? You know, so firstly you transcend the body, and then you have to come back into it. You know, you have to descend. And that's, I calling embodiments. And embodiments, in some way, for me, has been, you know, related to trauma healing, is to, and related to Nassim's talks, is about this cleaning the memory, the propensity to be magnetized to the event horizon, which is an assembly point of you based on your memories in your past, including your ancestors and your you know, like, you have a cultural past, I have a cultural past. You know, I had a lot of Middle Eastern flavored thingies from my father's side that, you know, I ended up, you know, finding my way through. Yeah. So we have identity, which can be quite gross. You know, it's like, you know, I'm a healer, or, you know, I'm somebody and I do this. But we can have these subtle flavors and senses of self that we're born with. So, you know, to notice that you have them is the task. Yeah. And for me, you know, the way of thinking of it is contrasting. If I can access my deepest state at the moment of the absolute, yeah, then that's the closest I can get to who I really am. That actually serves to illuminate what's not that. Yeah. So you move your point of perception from this assembly point, holding all your memory,
yeah,
and all the ancestral memory that has a proclivity which creates a noticer that notices the world through a filter, yeah, and therefore sees what you believe, versus sitting as the absolute, as pure awareness, and seeing it as it really is without the filter, yeah. And then being one with that as a physical experience in the body, that the body is awareness, you know, like people think of awareness and they're up here somewhere. It's like, I'm awareness, I'm in my third eye.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's good, you know, like perceiving from your third eye is a big piece, you know, rather than using your eyeballs or the back of your head or whatever. But perceiving as from your finger and your toes and your liver and your organs, you know, and your skin, and this more of a sensual animal, yeah, kind of experience, experiencing itself, you know, as without a separation between that and you, without a two-ness in the experience of self. So, you know, you could explore, like when you're sharing with me, oh, I had this kind of holistic, non-Dantian central column type experience. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's your Sushumna channel. Yeah.
My what?
So
What? My what channel?
it's called a Sushumna. You can Google that.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's a column of light potentially. Yeah, and if it had a physical location, it would be the center of the spine.
Mm.
You know, but it's an energetic. It's not in matter. It's not, you know, material in that usual way. But it's kind of like, for me, the thing is, yeah, you can have all these profound mystical experiences, but to integrate them, the question, who am I and who's having this experience? You know, if there's a separate I that's experiencing it, then there's a duality. And so how then can we become my Sushumna channel without having a separation looking at it?
So is that when we're noticing the looker?
Well, it's when the looker is integrated.
Okay.
That's the real task. You know, noticing the noticer is the first piece of that task. It's like if you're seeing what you're seeing, yeah, and you're believing what you're seeing, you're not aware that you're peering through a filter that's shaping the world around you. And we're creating a lot of shit on the world, on the planet, you know, with pollution and, you know, 5G and all these different crazy things. So in my view, the reason that we're doing that is that we feel separate from it. If we were one with it, we would not, it'd be like hurting yourself.
Wouldn't need all of that.
Yeah, we wouldn't need to do that. And we would be life. We would be life itself. It would be heaven on earth. And the creative power would come from the battery of love, from the power of love, which is the absolute. You know, it comes from no piece of you being separate from that, from the that you are. It's separation. Any separation is a movement out of the absolute, is a disconnect from the absolute. And anytime you are out of the absolute as a me, you are creating a shadow by default. There's always going to be the polarity. You will always find a polarity. If there's an I, you know, there will be something that I is creating, and there'll be suffering in it. So to move yourself to the very center, the Sushumna channel, if you want, yeah. And then not be the observer of that very center, but integrate as the very center is what I'm talking about. And there's an element in here that collapses time, because in the very center, in the absolute, there is no time. It's eternal. It's just now. And as soon as you move out of center, you are now in time. And the reason that you're mostly moving out of center is because there's shit in the memories of the past which are magnetizing you. It's like you have to have this lesson. You have to learn that's not me. And be able to have the power to choose to remain here as you. Like returning back to the original human blueprint is what I like to call it, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, there's I mean, the Nassim describes it as there's this space, the field of energy, and then out of that comes into materiality. And as we move along, well, what we perceive is that we're moving along space, but in actual fact, there's memories of all of us, and it's reflected everywhere. So being more aware is firstly being knowing that the memory exists, and that's experienced through the looker. And
through the felt sense. Through the felt sense, what you're feeling right now is infused with memory. Because there's a looker who's holding that sense of self that was created from all those experiences. You could say that all those experiences are unresolved. They resolve when they return home to love, which is they return back to the absolute, back to the field of emptiness, back to the field of potentiality, back to the field of possibility that hasn't created anything in form yet. So if, what we're doing is like, if you zoom into a memory in your body or a sensation in, say, your shoulder, if you zoom into that, if you keep zooming in and down and in and down and in, you'll end up in the absolute, because the end point, the beginning point and the end point is always the infinite, the absolute, before form. And actually, before form is not appropriate way to say it, because there is no time, there is no before, and there is no after. So that frequency that manifests in physical form as your shoulder is actually the absolute singing a certain song. And it's a frequency, it's a sound in some way that's arising without arising. We haven't realized that it's the absolute. We're attached to it in form. Oh, my shoulder hurts, I want it to go away. But your shoulder hurts because it's got a message in there, it's got a memory in there, it's got a story in there, it's got something that isn't integrated home into the absolute.
I can't remember who said this, but I really liked it. And they said that we are like a symphony, and so potentially whatever's out of tune, I suppose, maybe that's what the point is, that we're trying to, I suppose that the work is being in tune with all the pieces that we are. And that's
so
work.
That's coherence. In my speak, or many of us would talk about that as coherence. So whether you're exploring it energetically or as biology, there's this whole field around the microbiome and the immune system, and actually, you're not a you, you're a we. You're a trillion life forms that are dancing together in some sort of homeostasis that keeps your heart beating and the blood circulating. And if that's out of whack, perhaps because of a memory and because of a position, every memory has a position. Every memory has a sense of self that goes with it. Every experience has a perceiver that's perceiving it, until you are the absolute. And then the perceiver's integrated. But when you look at that microbiome that's maybe showing up as you out of balance, it's not separate to having a pain in your shoulder, and a sense of self that's looking at it. In fact, in my exploration, the identity or the sense of self has a direct link to a life form, say a parasite, that lives within you. And, the parasite is like the compensation for your inability to be yourself. It's like the parasite is your identity. The who I think I am is a coping strategy or an adaptation to fit into the world, you know, to stay safe in the world and to be loved by people. You know, it's like we become something, we adapt because we want to belong. The deepest belonging is to belong to yourself, you know, to your soul. Yeah. And then you just are you and you shine your light. Whereas when you're compensating to fit in, you're adapting out of yourself. Because in order to belong and feel safe and feel loved, I got to show up in another way. And that's not true. And who is it who thinks that? Is the wounded?
Yeah, who's...
No, it's the one who's wounded that thinks that we need to do that. So.
Wow.
There's a lot, you know, there's this journey. This is why I've sort of moved away from healing and healer, because you know, people come to me, or used to come to me, or sometimes still do. It's like, I've got a problem to fix. You know, I've got this dynamic in a relational thing. I've got this physical problem or this emotional problem and so on. And the work that we're doing is not particularly to fix the problem. It's just to realize that there isn't a problem. It's your perception that thinks there's a problem, you know, so... Yeah. It's like the focus of healer is a duality that says, you know, something's wrong with you and I need to heal it, you know, whether that's an outside healer or yourself. Versus what I prefer to focus on is, I'm here to be myself, and what's in the way of that. Yeah, and there becomes more of an alignment to that sort of curiosity of what is myself, you know. And what is this and what is that? And that whole journey of discovery that we dance in, yeah. And that's an infinite journey. It's not like a 2-week or a 8-week program. It's kind of like...
No. I mean, it's the fundamental basis of perception. So like you're going really to the base.
Yes.
Where the traumas or whatever problems arise.
Yes. Yes.
So...
And there's a lot, you know, in that, like that upper dantian, you know, people can think of their mind. The mind can think of itself, but they tend not to feel the mind. And the mind itself and the thoughts and the thinker actually have a vibration, and you can feel them. So like with Nassim's work, his models are, or his mathematical expressions of totality are a holographic. Yeah, because we don't live in this 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional frame, you know. It's kind of like everything is related to everything. And I loved in that last video that I posted his description of how the hand moved. You know, I don't know
through space.
Yeah, it's like, it's not just calculating like in a Newtonian way that it's here and the speed that it took to get to there and da-da-da-da-da. It's like popping in, popping out, popping in, popping out, you know. And how potentially with the understanding of that, you could pop up in a different location, or you could pop up without your tumor. Yeah. And this is already happening, because the placebo effect is one of the greatest healing technologies that we have. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like not knowing.
It already works.
Yes, already there. So yeah, I followed him for 15 years before he was even popular. And I had this deep resonance as a soul to, I don't have mathematics as a language, which is it's the truest language that we have. Yeah, mathematics. I just have this incompetence with English, and, you know, trying to throw a few diagrams into the mix. And, you know, I found exploring sacred geometry was helpful too. It's moving you out of that mental frame. Yeah. And into a kind of imagery, sensing, kind of going deeper and deeper kind of frame. So the nervous system, you know, when we're talking about the nervous system is run by that sense of self, by that perception.
Yeah.
And so when it's separate, it's always going to be stressed and creating dis-ease. And when it's one with you, when there's only it, you know, when you are yourself, then there's nothing stressing you. I'm not saying like, you know, stress, I should qualify this a bit, you know, people meditate to be not stressed, but there's a need for some stress. You know, it's not about, I think Joe Dispenza talked about it in the context of surrender versus intention. You know, if you surrender too much, you're a blob on the sofa.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, the body was designed to, you know, to hunt and to gather and, you know, to lift weights and to move. The body is not designed to be a blob on the sofa. And in some way, that whole non-dual, the original non-dual teachings were, you know, the guy went into a cave for 40 years, yeah, and contemplated life from his cave, but he didn't get married and have kids and do life. He separated himself from all the stresses, you know, and hung out in a little cave. Okay, that's challenging, survival wise or whatever. It's lonely, or, you know, so there was a lot of things to work on being alone in a cave for 40 years, but it didn't set you up very well to be in the crucible of relational experience as a parent or a, you know, something like that. So I think some of those ancient cultures that they did the family life, and it was when the family was grown up that they entered the monastery. But it's still a separation. Like my view is, why not live it? why not be yourself in your relationship and in your life?
Do it all at the same time.
Yes, because it is all happening at the same time.
Yeah.
Not that there isn't time.
Nor a method.
Exactly, you're onto it.
So the nervous system, I suppose, is like a conduit between the physical world and our bodies, and then you know, there's probably a similar thing, but on the reciprocal side.
Yeah.
So I suppose.
Yeah, it's the filter that's creating. It's the creator of your reality. I love. I was talking to somebody last night. I was out at dinner with an old friend, and they were talking about schizophrenia for some reason. I can't remember how we got on that subject. Schizophrenics can have two separate personalities, and one personality has a disease in the body and blue eyes, and the other personality doesn't have the disease and has green eyes, which for me is a testament to the power of the person, you know, the sense of self, that's this one or this one, in changing completely your physiology. Yeah.
Major trauma there.
Yeah. So, you know, I mean, I think schizophrenia is greatly misunderstood. And in some way, we're all schizophrenic. If we've got identities, we're all schizophrenic. It's just that we're functional schizophrenic rather than dysfunctional schizophrenic. But schizophrenia is a result of trauma. You know, it splits off. It can't be here. And it's looking for a character that can serve it, or a way of being, you know, and it's, it's born out of trauma for sure. But what I think is just phenomenal is this evidence, this scientific evidence that, you know, one of the dudes in this schizophrenic character has a disease and the other one doesn't. And it's the same body. So what's creating the disease is that sense of self, you know. So staring into an experience will take you a long way. It will take you, you know, avoiding experience is not what I'm talking about. It's the willingness to have the experience is very fundamental, because the lesson is in the experience. But the experience will take you to a point, and then you'll be stuck. You know, the frozen shoulder or the, you know, the pain or whatever will not go away. It might diminish, it might become better and more bearable, but it's never fully healed until the one who created it has gone home. You know, so that's this whole idea of noticing the noticer. And for me, it's a absolutely fast track, you know, we used to call it fast track Buddhism, but fast track, it's just fast track. You know, meditation was all about, you know, I love people who've done lots of meditation, and I love people who've done lots of trauma healing, because they have good skills as far as noticing the field and what's in it and all of that.
Yeah.
But they have not turned around and looked at who's looking, who's creating this. And that's the fast track. Yeah. But it's going to take you into some challenges for sure, because it challenges your whole world. It's not you having a problem. It's like, who are you? It challenges who are you. Yeah. So it's not, you know, I always say, you know, the people I was with last night said, oh, I'd really like to work with you. I said, oh, I'm not taking any extra sessions at the moment, because that person's really wanting the blue pill, and I'm providing the red pill. And I've worked with many people who I used to hold them up, because I was a healer, you know, and I still have my quirks. But sometimes people just have to suffer a lot more before they're ready. You know, and if they become dependent on you to help them, and you're alleviating their suffering, you're actually not helping them. You're better off letting them have their suffering. You know, it's really weird. I've been through quite a lot as a healer in how to be in the world, because that was my most significant identity, you know.
Well, because in that way, you're just feeding a particular identity from that person.
I'm feeding their wound and their state of woundedness and their inability to be self-reliant.
Yes.
And their need of me, you know, to help them. And that's basically reinforcing them to stay wounded. Yeah. Yeah. And
enforcing that gap between the
and it's forcing me into a position of responsibility. Well, it's not forcing me, but I was defaulted into being a healer identity. So, you know, I started as a baby taking responsibility for my parents.
So was that what was happening with Anastasia?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I've journeyed with her for a while. And there was a lot there, and there was basically nothing that I felt I could do that would help her, except to tell her that, you know, I wanted to sever the relationship. She understands in some way, you know, and we're friends. And, you know, so we have enough of a base that because I don't want to create, you know, I kind of feel myself as soulmates to everybody. So I don't want to create any more separation. So it took a while to understand how to do that with grace, but to do it. Yeah. So, anyway.
It was a good example just to understand that, because I certainly wasn't understanding what was happening. I was just seeing particular patterns. So
and I was getting frustrated. So I was called into a lot of my own healing as a result of that. But the straw that broke the camel's back for me is I posted a question of, are you willing to be completely new? I can't remember what my question was, but something along those lines. Are you willing to die? You know, and everybody kind of said yes, or yes, but I'm scared, or something like that. And she said no. And that's exactly what the problem was, is that willingness wasn't there. And it's very challenging because I see a lot of similarities in her journey to my own journey. And I'd like to feel that I could help, but perhaps my journey is not to help in that situation. And so, you know, the door is still open, but for now, that's what's going on, you know. And
well, I think you are helping by making that choice.
So I think so too. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but you know, that thank you for bringing that up, because I think it serves to illustrate the difference. In, like, I'm not a healer, I'm a human being endeavoring to become myself. And I'm endeavoring to do that by sharing this work with other people. And that I'm learning as much by being in the group, you know, as you are by being in the group. You know, that it's not an exclusive teacher-student relational thing. It's a balance of, you know, you guys are my teacher. Yeah. And this is a completely different orientation. It's a very non-dual orientation. It's like, I'm not in a position, you know, and it's very challenging because I don't want to be in that sense of self. Yeah. And yet other people might want me to be in that sense of self. I want you to be my teacher, or I want you to be my healer. And so they'll be trying to imprint that on you. They'll be trying to project that on you. And that makes them wounded, or it makes them a student, you know. And that's fine. There's value in that. But there's also limitation in that. So, you know, I love the feeling of we're all learning from the moment. We're all learning from each other. And it's the moment that teaches us.
That's beautiful, you know.
Yeah. So are you clear now about the nervous system and integration? That question gone home to some extent? Or?
I think so. It's solidified something. I don't think that was the real question that I wanted to ask. I was just, I suppose, I think the conversation we had today certainly was really helpful. Yeah. So, but something triggered and I used those words.
Yeah. And words are limited, you know, so I'm reading your words on Facebook, but I'm also feeling you. You know, it's like, I'm feeling inside me, what does your words bring up? And for me, it was like, I don't know how to answer your question because I don't really know the deeper. I could sense it with the Joe Dispenza, and you've just watched Nassim, and, you know, it's kind of like opening some doors here, you know.
Oh my God.
There's lots of doors that we could go down. Which one is it that Shu wants to go down? And can I take him there? You know, can I can't answer most of these questions. You know, it's kind of like.
No, it was good because we're able to have a conversation around, you know, some of the work and some of the ideas that were brought up, and I think I just wanted to find some alignment between them a little bit. Yeah,
I think that's valuable, and I think if you like Nassim and listen to him, and you explore the model of consciousness that we're using. Which was originated before I did the work with Nassim, and his work really validated my work in such a profound way. It was kind of like I used to feel like what I did was forbidden. You know, like people don't want that. It's kind of outside normal. It's outside the square. It's like, don't go there. It upsets everybody, you know. I really used to feel that it was forbidden, and that I didn't have any allies, and I didn't have a tribe, if you will, you know, because this was not something that you couldn't converse about it. You could only converse with somebody if you'd taken them on a soul journey, and then they were in a different place. So it was a kind of very challenging journey for me. And when I did the program that Nassim offered, it was the very first one he did. It's an online program. I can't remember. It was like 10 modules, but it was like self-paced. And, you know, some modules were like mathematical equations. And, you know, I was like, oh, this is for the physicists that are here, you know, not for the heathens. So, you know, I did my best with it, but what I got so much from it, because it was like this sense of, yes, there are other people, you know, doing this thing from this, through this other doorway, you know, which just, I don't know, it just brought this validation to doing what I do. And yeah, so, you know, if he always felt like a soul brother, and you know, when he talks, it totally resonates to my model and how I work and what I think, so on. And so I think, you know, I like to introduce some of those kinds of videos and some of those kinds of talks, because I think, you know, you've got a mind similar to mine. It's like there's this mind that wants to know, and as long as it's not coming out of the wound and in avoidance and trying to find a path out of, you know, the pain, then the mind is a very powerful tool, and it's valuable to use it. And so, you know, listening to somebody that's explored reality in the way that Nassim has, you know, from his childhood. I don't know if you ever find one of his videos where he talks about his childhood and how he struggled with the physics professor at the age of 7 or something, you know.
I think he mentioned it in the video.
So he's like a savant, you know. He's like tapped in. He meditates, you know. He gets his knowledge from, and Einstein did as well. And in fact, every great scientist, this is one of the things that he points out in his program, that even Newton was looking for God. But in the time of Newton, if you were a scientist looking for God, you were going to be hung or burned at the stake, because that was the realm of religion, and science was relegated to something completely separate. And that's all about power. Yeah. And we still have the vestiges of that in our society now, the split between God and science, you know, and people wanting facts. Like, there is no such thing as a fact.
Oh, God, that's a big trauma.
Yeah, and that freaks people out. It's like, I want to know, I'm going to take this drug and I'm going to get that result. It's like, maybe not. Yeah. So, I mean, don't get me going on the medical profession, because that's you know, it's kind of like, you are not a symptom.
No, exactly. I've got major issues with that. The telly doesn't work. But that's from the old paradigm, the previous identity and the way it was looking at the world.
But if you've got a curious mind, you know, just go down these rabbit holes. And you know, I find listening to this stuff just kind of starts to seep in, and then when I'm in a meditation, it's kind of like I'm sensing with that broader, bigger flavor. It might still have an assembly point, but it's kind of different to the little me's assembly point. You know, it's kind of like the big me's assembly point. It reminds me of Aaron when he was in this big library in his head, you know, and he was little. You know, it was that me, you know, that big me, library full of, you know, information, and you know, the whole universe is my library, and versus the little me that's going, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed by the amount of stuff that's out there, you know.
I've definitely. I'm seeing. I have gone down rabbit holes, and I'm starting to see real patterns in every different discipline, whether it's psychology or archaeology or mathematics, or they're all starting to talk about the same thing, or even
you start to see how all the different paradigms are being.
It's all weaving, and then
they're all different windows looking at the same deeper truth.
That's right. And the work that we're doing is actually a very different one, but still it's a very physiological one that no one else is talking about. It's so interesting, because I actually posted something on my Facebook group yesterday, the Embodied Truth group, because there's a beautiful woman that's done some work with me and traveled with me in Egypt, and she's got a marketing background, and she loves what I do, and she gets it in some way, and she wants to, you know, make it more accessible to people, which I'm very open to. But, you know, I'm a bit jaded, so I thought, well, she's not jaded yet. So
So, you know, and we're teaming up as souls, you know, we don't have like some
Yeah.
contract or whatever. But she's kind of in the sort of masculine, you know, what's the demographic and you know, what are the messages that we need to, you know, and I'm into like,
Yeah.
I can't do that. I can't do that.
Yeah.
I cannot segregate the universe into a demographic, you know. It's kind of like, I don't want to exclude anybody, you know. But I want people to exclude themselves if they're not ready. So I'd much rather ask them tough questions, which is much more of a feminine. It's more like magnetic and feminine rather than we're about to get into the whole feminine masculine discussion as two windows to look through. So the feminine in her power is going, you know, I'm in my integrity, and you know, I'm more interested in not what you think you want, but I'm more interested in what are you willing to do. You know, what are you willing to become new? Are you willing, you know, to move through discomfort? Are you willing, you know, are you aligned with that? Because if you're not, it doesn't matter how many skills, like, you know, using Anastasia again as an example, I mean, she's very masterful and very skilled in many, many ways, but she's got partly because she's got trauma, you know, so it's like, unless that thirst is in you, unless you've kind of like given up, you know, chasing the blue pill, then unless that's in you, it doesn't matter to me if somebody's semi-enlightened or completely traumatized. That's not important. I can work with anybody, because fundamentally we're all the same. And fundamentally, if the person is ready, then they will progress very well. And if they're not, it's kind of like, it feels like I have to hold them up, and I don't want to anymore. I've given up that, you know.
Well, because you know it doesn't work.
It doesn't work for me. It gave me a frozen shoulder. So, you know, and I'm still working through that. This is multi-generational, this dynamic. And I feel, you know, I did a personal sharing recently, but I feel really, really blessed. Like I totally resonate with why I'm having the challenges and experiences that I'm having, because it's all about embodiment, and that isn't out there. That isn't, you know, it's, the words are used, but the actual work isn't really out there. Well, I haven't seen it. And it's the feminine work, you know, so there's this whole new age feminine rising, you know, women with goddess outfits who hate men, basically. You know, it's like, that's not the feminine rising, you know, it's
a masculine
it's a wounded feminine who's angry. And I'm calling for an integration, you know, so it's like Ubud is full of that, by the way, and it's kind of like, I don't kind of fit in that circle unless I become goddess Kali, you know, and slap people around. But it's like the marketing for me is not marketing, it's really more just magnetism. You know, and it's really like, for me, I've had to learn to trust, you know, like for me it's magic that after 5 years or something, something popped on your email screen or whatever, and we reunited, and I can really feel as a soul how ready you were for that. You know, like before, I remember a conversation on a beach somewhere in Byron or something, where I think I said to you, you need to go off and live. You know, you were all full of the greatest questions, and they were profound. But you hadn't had the experiences that you needed to have. And it feels like now you have. You know? Now you've done that, you know, marriage and kids, and, you know, the trauma of all of that. And now you're in this place where you're bringing that in, or you're bringing this into that dynamic. You know, you've got the fodder to work with.
I've noticed, like, I mean, and because I've had to face some particular traumatic pieces in the past few years, and I found that it wasn't that, it was an easier step than to go, well, I've already faced some of the demons, and, well, I'm continually on this journey. It's much easier. Whereas some other people that I have maybe spoken about this particular work. You know, they said they wanted something, but were still unsure. And
Yeah.
they haven't lived, as you say, or there wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
The trigger.
They're still thinking there might be a different blue pill that would work, or
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. And, you know, I can relate to lots of people that I've worked with have said, I really love what you do, but I don't know how to tell anybody about it. And I said, yeah, I can relate to that. Because, you know, everything you say is going through the filter of what people know, and this is totally outside what's knowable. And so it's unbelievable, and it's miraculous, and it's, you know, all those things, and you by default cannot speak these secrets because the secrets cannot be spoken, but you can find them, and you can find the alchemy that if your inquiry is in integrity, if your inquiry is in alignment, the information will be revealed to you. And so, you know, the work is really just to prepare yourself and to know when you're in alignment, when you're not in alignment, and, you know, to be able to notice what's really going on when you do a meditation, rather than you're just doing a meditation, which is what most people are doing. And and that works to a point. You know, I did 15 years of Buddhist meditation, and it worked to a point, but it also didn't work.
So have you met anyone else that is doing similar work like you?
Yeah, there's a group that I'm in, with a woman or a couple of people that I met maybe 10 years ago, and for 2 or 3 years we were in a kind of joint endeavor called Alchemy Techniques. And she's amazing. Her name is Thesa Sophia, and you know, she's amazing, and she has a different. She does exactly the same work that we're doing, but she has a different way. She has her way, and pretty much every time I've got stuck, you know, her way is similar to mine in that we do our thing. We do it ourselves. You know, that we're not studying the Bhagavad Gita. We're studying the heart. And so we have that in common, but she was always able to keep moving, and I would get into situations where I'd get stuck. And it might be, you know, sort of 3 or 4 years would go by, and I'd be like in some gnarly place that I couldn't move through. And I would eventually kind of like, okay, there's something I'm totally blind to. I can't see here. And she'd be my go-to person. And, you know, so there'd probably be like 3 or 4 occasions where I've been kind of at a junction where, you know, I was in shutdown or freeze or whatever, and I really could not find my way out. And she would do something, you know, it's like none of it would make sense to me, but then I would just sit with it and so on. And you know, she's been an amazing gift to my journey when I've needed it, you know. And I would hope that that's the case for everybody who develops this self-reliant, this self-inquiry, and that only when you get stuck that you find somebody that you think has been through it. You know, it's like, I think my gift to people is that I feel like I'm that encyclopedia that's in Aaron's head. You know, it's like, oh, you want this energy or this energy. It's like I've been through enough initiations that I have access to all the codes in the library. Well, maybe not all of them, but a lot of them. And so that can help you. It's like a tuning fork. You know, it's like if your soul is calling for this and I have the code in the library to get that, it naturally comes through me. And if you're willing and open and ready, you will choose that path and you will open that door yourself and you will go through it. And I'm not doing anything, but I'm holding a vibration that's holding the possible paths that are there. And that's really what I think is valuable in working with another person, and that it's valuable for all of us to, like Thesa, for example, worked with a dude in San Diego, I can't remember his name right now. You know, so even though she has always done her own thing, and even though she worked with this dude and he says, do it this way, she's going, no, I'm going to do it my way. And so she does it her way. And there's something valuable in that, because the teachings and the way, if you're trying to impose a way, you're not discovering, you know, there's something about finding the way that's coming from a purer place. It's not coming from any dogma or anybody else's knowing or anybody else's realization. It's coming through you from source, but it can be inspired by other people's teachings and so on. Yeah. And I think you get that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I definitely do. And it's nice to know that there are a few other people that you have discovered that are out there like you.
Yeah, there's a few of us, and it's a very, you know, it's a path of surrender, you know, like the work that we do is very much the water work. You know, it's not the fire, like the Tantra people, they're all into, you know, the fire energies, and, you know, they get I think unless you've got water down, I think fire can really mess you up. So you can get burned there, you know, kind of thing. So
all right. Well,
all right. Well, lovely to chat with you.
Thanks for the conversation. It's been amazing.
Yeah, for me too. And it's interesting that it kind of happened, because I'd had some thoughts recently about having conversation with, you know, anybody in the group that wants to have conversation, and that we can then share that conversation, which we'll do. I'll post this in the group.
Oh, fantastic. Because I've got questions. I've got more questions. So it's just...
Yeah, well, there'll be time.
Yeah, there'll be time. So, okay, great.
All right, love. Have a wonderful
beautiful day.
You too. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.